Today I'm going to be showing how to make biscuits. The method that I use is so easy but always good, almost foolproof really. And I've been making biscuits like this for well over 20 years. Now I do have a video talking about biscuits and chocolate gravy. You may have seen that. But today I wanted to do my biscuits again because there's two other ways that I use that really simple dough, and I wanted to share those with you. So when I first learned how to make the biscuit recipe I'm going to show you today, which is really simple and almost foolproof, they always turn out good. I was first married, so I've been making it well over 20 years, making my biscuits like this. Well, when I was first married, I wanted to make biscuits like Granny did. And she puts the flour in her bowl, and then she works in the lard with her fingers, and then works in the liquid. She uses milk, and then she pats them out with her hands and bakes them like that, and they are so good. Lots of women in my area make their biscuits like that. It's a true art though. If you ever try it, it's very hard. What I would find is I would get it all over me, or even if I managed to do it like that, sometimes my biscuits were really good and then other times they were terrible. So one day I was complaining to Granny about it, saying, you know, I just can't make biscuits like you did, or like you do. Mine's just never as good as the ones that you make. So she said, well, what you ought to do is you ought to try making them like your Mamaw Marie. I said, well, okay, how did Mamaw Marie make them? And she said she only used self-rising flour and cream. That's all she used. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try that. Well, that's what I tried, and that's how simple it is. Well, in the days that Mamaw Marie was making hers, I'm sure she had access to fresh cream, and over the years there's been once or twice that I had access to fresh cream, and it just takes them up a notch. It just makes even better biscuits. But most of the time what I use is just heavy whipping cream that you can buy in most any grocery store. So if you do a quick search, you'll find all kinds of recipes for whipping cream biscuits, because it's very popular, because they are really good. And sometimes there's often I would use a 2-to-1 ratio. That's another great thing about them, is that you can make a little or a whole lot depending on what you need. So I would use 2 cups of self-rising flour, and my favorite self-rising flour, or any kind of flour or cornmeal, is White Lily. I love White Lily. If you can find that, that's the best. But so I would use 2 cups and then 1 cup of whipping cream. Over the years, because I've made them so much, I just put my flour in there and keep putting whipping cream until I'm satisfied with how I want them. Other recipes that I've seen use an equal ratio. They use like 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of cream. So that might be something that you just want to play with. But first up I'm going to show you how simple it is to make those biscuits, and then I'm going to go on to the other 2 recipes, which are also very simple. So when it comes to baking your biscuits, there's different choices for you to actually put them on to bake. Most of the time I use a cookie sheet. That's mostly what I use. Often though, I will use a cast iron pan. We have so many and I love them. Today I'm going to be using a griddle pan that we have. So, but even like a baking stone, I've seen people use those. Pretty much anything works. And over the years, sometimes I grease the pan like I have today with lard. You could use butter. At other times I don't. It's not really a biscuit that you have to do that with if you don't want to. Greasing does kind of make the bottom of the biscuit get a little more crunchy, a little more, so that's what I like. And actually I'm going to put this pan in. I'm not going to let it get as hot as like I would if you've seen any of my cornbread videos. I think that's really the secret to good cornbread, is having hot cast iron. I'm not going to let it get that hot. Basically just going to let it kind of melt and warm it before I put the biscuits on it. So I'm going to go ahead and preheat that. But even just a plain cookie sheet works fine. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to do about 1 cup of flour today for the biscuits. And I've got some cream and I'm just going to pour it in there. And so when you get to this stage, once the dough kind of comes together, you could certainly do like Granny does and just kind of pat them out with your fingers if that's what you want to do. Just kind of all come together now for me. But I'm going to go ahead and cut them out here. Put me some flour out. And when it comes to what you would want to cut them out with, this is the biscuit cutter. It's kind of a chopper. You can use it to chop slaw and different things with. But this is what I use for a biscuit cutter, but even a glass works just fine. And again, like I said, you can do it like Granny if you prefer. Now, about biscuits, this is a common thing when you watch biscuit videos or hear people talk about biscuits. They'll say, you know, you don't need to overwork the dough. You don't need to overwork the dough. Well, if you look on YouTube, you'll find videos of people making this simple biscuit recipe like this, and you'll find people that really are gentle with the dough, and then you'll find people that really kind of knead it a lot. And it still, that's what I've found over the years, is it still just turns out to be a great biscuit no matter what. I've taught a lot of cooking classes, and I've taught people who have never made biscuits before. So you give people who've never made biscuits before some dough, and if they really work it, it's almost like that they're playing with Play-Doh, because they've never done it before, and they kind of pat it out and put it back. And anyway, the point I'm making is their biscuits still turn out good, and they're still really impressed and happy to go home having learned how to make biscuits like this. Now you can use a rolling pin here. I have one handy. I'm going to use it for something else in a minute. But I just use my fingers and just pat out the biscuits. And the thickness is really up to you. Some people, especially in the South and in Appalachia, love what they call cathead biscuits, the really big, thick biscuits. I like mine more on the thinner side than that, but it's total personal preference. And if you've never made biscuits much, then that's just something you need to play around with and see. Maybe make them thicker one time and then make them thinner and see what you think about it. One tip is, if you just push straight down and you don't turn whatever you're cutting with, they will rise higher for you if you're worried about that. So if you just go straight down. And then once I've got a few cut, I'm just going to lay those over to the side. We've got our pan heating now. And some more flour. Now the last little part, I just do it with my hands. I call it the baby biscuit. Some people call it the flum lolly. The flum lolly, you'll have to tell me if you have a different name for it. And it's usually, especially if it's a little small one like that, if I'm cooking breakfast or something, it comes out of the oven, I typically go ahead and eat that because I'm hungry. A lot of times you'll hear fond memories of people who say that when they were growing up, their mother or their grandmother let them have the baby biscuit.
I usually get the baby biscuit.
Corey says she usually gets the baby biscuit here.
I'm the baby, technically.
You are technically the baby. Only by 2 minutes, but I guess that still counts.
It counts.
It counts.
To me, anyway.
Counts to her. And let me tell you, being 2 minutes older counts to Katie, too.
Sure does.
She's really proud of being 2 minutes older than Corey and being the oldest, for sure. Okay, now you can see our lard has melted, so I'm just going to lay the biscuits out there. And I don't have a full pan today since we were just making a small amount, and then I'm going to put this in the oven and let it be cooking while I show you the next recipe. So the second recipe, using that same basic biscuit recipe, is for cheese garlic biscuits. Maybe you've been to the most famous place that I know that serves them is Red Lobster. We don't have a Red Lobster here, nowhere near here do we have one. But when I was pregnant with Corey and Katie, I had a really miserable pregnancy, one where I had to go to the doctor pretty much every week. I had to go. Well, I went to the doctor in Gainesville, Georgia, so about 2 hours away, and they had a Red Lobster, and that's where I like to eat. And they had these kind of little biscuits, and I had forgot about them, I think, and maybe somewhere years ago I seen them somewhere, maybe seen them on TV or seen them in a magazine where somebody was making them, and I thought, oh, I forgot about those little biscuits. Red Lobster used to have those. And then I started thinking, well, why couldn't I just simply make my biscuit dough and throw in some cheese and throw in some garlic and see if that worked? And it did. It worked so well. So now I'm going to show you how easy that is. So I'm just going to take about a cup. Again, it just depends on the amount of biscuits that you need, cheese biscuits in this case, with garlic. I'm going to pour me some cream in. And in this instance, I want my dough to be a little bit wetter because I'm going to drop these. I'm not going to pat them out. You certainly could though if you want to, but I usually don't. So I'm going to keep adding until I've kind of got a wet dough going. Maybe even just a tad more. Now that I've got that mixed up, I'm going to add, I've got some garlic powder here, and I don't really measure. What I do is I sprinkle some and I put some cheese, and then I get a little tiny piece of the dough and taste it, and if I can taste the garlic powder in that little piece of dough, then I know I've got enough. But again, that's just, you know, you might not like as much as me, or you might like a whole lot more. And I've just grated some sharp cheddar cheese, so I'm just going to throw some of that in. We'll stir it up and see what I think that looks like. And I make these, this is really quick, like if you want a bread, like if we're having something for supper, but I don't necessarily want cornbread, but I don't want biscuits either. So this gives it more of a, I don't know, a savory kind of different thing that you could do, but it's really, really simple. So now that I've got it, I'm going to taste a little piece and see. I might put a little more garlic. Corey, will you hand me a spoon?
Sure.
Now I'm just going to drop them. I've got a baking pan here. It's funny, I'll show you this bacon cookie sheet. This is one of the ones I've had since me and Matt was married. It was a cheap one. You can probably see that it's wonky. It doesn't stay stable, but it's my favorite pan. It cooks the best. So even though it's not a, you can tell how inexpensive it was. Somebody probably bought it for one of our showers is probably where it come from. But it's still, even though, and you can tell how long I've used it, how black it is, how many times it's been used. But even though it's wonky, I love how it bakes, so I use it all the time. So now I'm just going to take my spoons and drop these out. And you can make them again as big or as small as you would want. And when they come out of the oven, I don't think I even said, the biscuits I bake at 450. So I bake these, I bake it all at 450, everything I'm doing today. And the biscuits take about 10 to 12 minutes. That kind of depends on the size of biscuit you make. But the same for these. And when they come out of the oven, some people with these garlic cheese biscuits, they will like have some melted butter and put on the top of them. But I don't do that ever. But I'm sure it's really good if you do. Sure to get every little bit on there. Okay, so now we've got that. We're going to put those in the oven to cook, and then I'm going to show you the last recipe that I use this basic biscuit recipe for. So for the last thing that I use that basic recipe for is to make baked hand pies. Kind of like fried pies. I have a great video about fried pies. I'll link to that so you can go see it. But these are just really quick, easy pies, hand pies, kind of the half moon. They're called mule ears, different things in different parts of Appalachia that you can make to put in the oven and bake them that way. It's just faster than frying them and probably healthier for you too. But boy, I love fried pies, don't you? So it's the same thing. I'm going to take about a cup of my flour. See, I've lost my spoon somewhere. Corey, will you hand me a spoon?
Yeah.
I'm going to add some of the heavy whipping cream. Will you give me a spoon? Make my dough. I'm going to use a little bit more. this one I actually am going to roll out. I'm going to roll them out. So first I'm just going to turn all my dough out into one of the corners here of my mat and get me some flour to get all this out of the bowl. Whoops, I just threw some on the floor. I have to put Corey on that, getting that up. Get all our dough out. Give me a little bit of flour. And then I'm just going to take I don't know, about a walnut size, but again, you figure out what works best for you, and kind of pat it out. And then I'm going to get my rolling pin, roll it out. And I try to make it fairly thin, but you don't want it so thin that it comes apart. I'm going to need a knife too. I might as well give me a knife. I ain't got a knife, Corey. She'd wipe that knife off for me. With Corey's help. And then what you put in it's totally up to you. Peach preserves works really well. Any kind of apple filling, if you have dried apples and you reconstitute them, that's so good. What I'm using today is something, it's my sweet candied apples that I make each year. We've got our timer going. Sweet candied apples that I make each year, so I'm going to be using that, and then also a chocolate one. But pretty much the sky's the limit. You could even make them savory if you wanted to by putting something savory. So I put a spoonful in the middle, and if you wanted to be really precise, you could make sure that when you're rolling out your dough, that you make it in this little perfect circle. But I don't do that. I just roll them out ever how they end up, and then I cut kind of the excess, and then I need a little bit more flour, and then I kind of fold up the edges. So once my edges are covered up, I take my fork and put 1 or 2 holes in the middle of it, and then I transfer it over to my baking sheet. I've got some parchment on my baking sheet. Okay, I had to get my biscuits out. Now we'll do another one. Some more flour. So I have a little circle here. I could aim for that, but I don't know. A little better. Use some more of those wonderful apples. Hopefully this year I can do a video and show you. It's my favorite apple preserves recipe. There's also a pear one that's very, very similar. You could take a fork too and kind of do the edges if you wanted to. I usually just pinch them in. I'm gonna move that. There's another one. So now I'm going to show you how to do there's a chocolate variation, and it wouldn't be for everyone, because it's not like when you think of a chocolate pie and you think of the creamy pudding-like interior. It's not like that at all, but I love it. I don't know why. And I read about it, I think, first in an old cooking book, and then I've seen it in different places. So was a pretty widespread thing that people used when they were making pies, the fried variety and also the baked variety. So the texture thing is what a lot of people don't like. So you put a little bit of, this is like a variation of a chocolate, a little bit of butter, a little bit of cocoa, and some sugar. And it ends up being this really gritty, kind of chocolatey mess in there. That's why I'm saying a lot of people don't care for it, because it's not what you expect when you think of a chocolate pie being all creamy and pudding-like on the inside. But I really like it. And it's really simple too to do. I love thinking about, though, who first come up with doing that. The chocolate and the sugar and the cocoa. Maybe it was some mother or grandmother that was busy and didn't take time and thought, I'm just going to take the easy way out, and then they did it instead of making the full pudding, and then they was like, hey, this is not bad. I think I kind of like it. Sometimes these are so quick, these little baked hand pies. This is what I make for breakfast. Maybe one of these and an egg, not even have any meat or anything with it. Throughout the day, if I make a whole pan full, then even after breakfast, they make a pretty good snack later in the day with maybe a piece of cheese and some fruit. So we've got everything out of the oven, so now we're going to taste it and show you how it turned out. And how long have we been doing this, Corey? It's really quick. All of these are so quick to make.
20 minutes, 30.
Yeah, not even an hour probably that we've made them all. So you can see how quick they are to make. Anyway, we're going to start with the cheese biscuits, the garlic cheese biscuits. So you can kind of see the little cheese places along them. And as I said, some people put butter over top of them when they first come out, but I don't usually do that. But you can see the insides have some cheese, and they're just really soft. They're so good with supper if you're having something savory. So I'm going to try. Very good. Way better than Red Lobster's, I promise you. Very good. So now that we've tried that, I'll lay that over to the side. Let's try one of the, can't tell which is apple and which is chocolate. I want to open up both of them. Let's open up this little one here. See what's on the inside of it. Oh, the chocolate. So as I said, the chocolate though, this is, some people will really like this and some people won't, because it gives a really kind of strange texture. It's really gritty. But if you're a chocolate lover, you probably will love it. Very, very good. Well, let's try one of the apple ones. So these are more the traditional. The apple one would be the more traditional one. So you can see the apples coming out the inside. See the preserves there. You could do this with almost any kind of jelly. Even just regular jelly would work good to do this with. So I'm going to take a bite of it. So good. So much like a taste of home for me, because Granny made them when I was growing up. And you can really, oh, that's the best. Way better than the chocolate, although I do like the chocolate. But you can really see why they were called hand pies or mule's ears, because of the way they're shaped and how easy they are. Also half moons, sometimes you'll moon pies. And most of the time they are fried, but the baked ones are really good too. So now for the biscuits. You can see how they turned out very nicely. See, they did rise. If you made them thicker, they would rise even more, if you're looking for that cat head biscuit. But what I'm very excited about today is, you see when I break one open, they're just really soft and light on the inside. Very lovely. But I have the best thing to go on biscuits today. I have some chocolate gravy. Now if you go watch my chocolate gravy recipe or video, you'll see the way that the chocolate gravy I grew up on is it's really different than most chocolate gravies out there if you do a search, because it just used water and flour and cocoa and sugar. Lots of chocolate gravy recipes are more of a syrup kind of, more of almost like something you'd put on ice cream. You think about that. Well, over the weekend we had Corey and Austin's shower, which was wonderful. It went really well, but my best friends Julia and Shannon and Ginger helped me. So they brought some of the food and they helped me decorate and do all that kind of stuff. And Ginger brought we had a brunch, so that's why she brought chocolate gravy. So we had breakfast things. So she brought her chocolate gravy, and the kind that she makes is more of a syrup and it is so good, and she let me bring it home. So now that's what I'm gonna put on my biscuits right now. I've warmed it up in the microwave. So good. And if anyone's interested in Ginger's recipe, I'll put that in the description below. And that might be more similar to what you grew up with, if you did grow up with chocolate gravy. Mm. Just one of the finest things in life. My biscuits are so good. Even though they're mine, they please me. You have to figure out how to make them to please you. And then Ginger's wonderful chocolate gravy. Mm. I'm definitely going to spoil my dinner tasting all this, but so good. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how easy it is, how I make my biscuits, and they're so good. And then also how you can use that dough to make the garlicky cheese biscuits. So if you're having a savory supper that you need some bread to go with, it's so easy to whip up and make quickly. But also the wonderful hand pies that are baked in the oven that are quick and easy too. But all of these relate to my life here in the Appalachian Mountains, so I hope you enjoyed seeing that peek into the biscuits. Is by far the most often way that I use this recipe, but also how versatile it is for the other types of bread that I've showed today. And as always, I hope that you'll just continue to drop back by often and help me celebrate Appalachia.